Hey there, welcome back to the College Basketball Bracket Science Podcast, your encyclopedia for the college basketball season. We had a filled and loaded Saturday with tons of entertainment. 2 undefeated teams lost. That means there is only 1 undefeated team remaining. We're going to go over all of these results, not just from Saturday, but over the entire weekend. It was the busiest weekend we have had so far. And then we did just release our most recent bracketology with just the top 4 seeds. Didn't release the entire field because, quite frankly, Tuesday is the busiest Tuesday where we have had so far this season. So we'll end up doing another bracketology probably on Thursday. So that'll be the next show. But we did release the top 4 seeds. The 1 seeds are pretty much set for just about anyone who does bracketology. I'm pretty sure you'll find the 1 seeds as pretty similar in just about all of those. And then we will talk about the games to watch, including this Tuesday, which is just absolutely spectacular. We got decent days. Wednesday and Thursday and Friday are a little slow. Then we'll talk again on to preview the entire weekend. But and then, of course, we will talk about the opening KenPom betting lines. We'll be ad-free today, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe button below. Follow us on social media at Bracket Science with 2 S's. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Go check it out. We're getting a nice conversations on there. A lot of comments been coming in. Really love to see that. And then click the link below, the first link in the description of this video, for some quality clothing, cheap, affordable apparel for your favorite college teams. All right, let's dive into the results. Now, we're going to go all the way back to Thursday. This is going to be a quicker podcast. We're just going to talk about, we got the whole scoreboard pulled up for you, but yeah, we're not going to talk about all of these games because it was a little bit slower on, some of these days, but the game we do need to talk about on Thursday was number 22, Illinois, going to Oregon and just destroying them. 109-77. It was an absolute blowout. In fact, this is the largest margin of victory at a top 10 opponent ever, not just in terms of the AP poll. Since the AP poll started, this is the largest home loss for a top 10 team ever. Incredible stuff. Illinois really put the world on notice. Oregon, we kind of saw it coming. Oregon, they've got a tremendous resume. We'll talk about them in our bracketology. They're going to be a great seed as of right now, but yeah, we kind of saw this one coming. Illinois looks like the highest ceiling team in all of the Big Ten right now. Purdue went to Minnesota, beat them. Memphis had no troubles with FAU. The other game we do kind of want to talk about, Penn State had a interesting affair, as they did end up beating Northwestern 84-80. A lot of questionable calls down the line. If you're a Penn State fan, you thought the late officiating was good. If you're a Northwestern fan, not so much. They were tough calls, but eventually Penn State ends up getting the win there. Indiana did get a win over Rutgers, and then Maryland lost at Washington. Tough one for the Terps. They had a rough week. We'll talk about them here again in a second. And then 2 teams who were, who have been surprisingly incredibly well. Liberty lost at home to Western Kentucky. That's a tough one. Liberty is the favorite in Conference USA. And then Oregon State got drilled at LMU. Oregon State was sort of on the bubble. That's a tough one to lose. Moving on to Friday, quickly, Creighton lost at Marquette. Creighton actually held in there. I thought Marquette was going to blow them out, but they held in there just fine. Michigan State, number 18 team in the country at this point. We did have a new AP poll, so we'll talk about that here in a second. Went to Ohio State and just kind of beat them. Just quite frankly led the entire game and just beat them. They looked like the better team, 69-62. Iowa went to Wisconsin and got drilled. Wisconsin put up 116 points. This Wisconsin team is really fun. They have a pretty high ceiling this year. They dominate Iowa, 31 points. Great win. Xavier went to Georgetown. Georgetown beat them 69-63. Don't look now. Georgetown's undefeated in the Big East. They're 3-0. Looking good in the second year under Ed Cooley. Most entertaining game of the night was Nevada going to New Mexico, where New Mexico beat them 82-81 on that last second shot, where it was just an absolute mess. Nevada turned the ball over on the inbound. New Mexico looked like they traveled and ended up getting a shot off, ended up winning 82-81. Nevada has not won a game in Mountain West play, 0-4. Yikes. Not going to talk about the rest of these games. We will mention Chicago State won their first game of the year against Wagner, 64-52, to move to 1-15 on the year. Good for Chicago State. All right, let's talk about Saturday, the main day. This was the big one. Tons and tons of action went on. Let's start We have the graphic pulled up. As you see, we do it in numerical order of where teams are ranked, just down the line. Number 1, Tennessee hosted John Calipari's number 23, Arkansas. I watched this entire game. Arkansas, quite frankly, looked like they did not want to be there. We'll talk about Kentucky here in a little bit, but Kentucky fans have to be just ecstatic right now at some of the things they're seeing. This Arkansas team, I mean, they were ended 13.5-point underdogs, I think. It seemed like a lot of points for such a talented team. Arkansas was rated higher by just about everyone in the preseason than Tennessee. They're no match. They looked like they didn't want to be there. They have no sort of offense outside of Boogie Fland. The team's not very good. They're on the bubble right now. Tennessee stays undefeated, 76-52. Auburn had no troubles with Missouri, 84-68. Missouri with a crazy backdoor cover there for those who bet. They were down 30 at one point. Came back and ended up covering their 18.5-point spread. Crazy. Iowa State just drilled Baylor. Iowa State is the top dog in the Big 12. There's no discussion about it. Houston is second, but there's a gap. There is definitely a gap. Iowa State 74-55, just the better team offensively, better team defensively. Duke had no troubles with SMU. A lot of people on SMU this year. I'm not. I don't think they're going to end up in the tournament. They have a good resume right now. I don't think they're going to end up in the tournament, though. I don't think they're that good. Duke went there without John Shire. John Shire battling an illness. Everyone's sick. Everyone's just fighting something. He obviously had it bad enough where he couldn't travel, but Duke, no problems, 89-62. Oklahoma, who was one of the last 3 undefeated teams, got drilled at number 5 Alabama as just kind of what we expected, 107-79. Kind of figured this one was coming. It was just a perfect spot for Alabama. They kill them. Number 6, Florida, one of the other undefeated teams, last 3 undefeated teams. They had a tough one going to number 10, Kentucky. Florida and Kentucky needs to be a rivalry because they produce the most entertaining basketball games ever. Last year, incredibly entertaining both games. This one, incredible. 106-100. Kentucky got the better of Florida. Florida missed a ton of free throws in this game and still put up 100 at Rupp. I'm not worried about Florida. This is a great win for Kentucky. Kentucky's resume is really good. Florida looked good as well. I like both the teams. Good win for Kentucky. Not worried at all about Florida. Team I am worried about, Texas. Texas went to number 13, Texas A&M, in an old rivalry game and was just absolutely no match. This was kind of almost a confidence must-win sort of game for Texas. They weren't even close. I mean, it was a blowout. It was actually somewhat close through a little bit of the first half, and then Texas A&M just took over. Texas A&M really off to a kind of underrated start this year. They've only lost 2 games. Looking at probably like a 3 seed right now. We'll talk about them here in a second. They won the game 80-60. Texas just no match. We'll talk about them. They got a big one on Tuesday night where they play who I believe the best team in the country. BYU went to number 14, Houston. Houston just dominated them. We saw BYU just dominate Arizona State, and it kind of put them on the map. They were absolutely no match for this Houston team. Houston won 86-55. Houston, I believe, is a national championship contender. I know we say that every single year because they're rated so highly in the metrics. Their defense is, once they get healthy, their defense is as good as anyone. And their offense, that's a little bit of the question, but it's still rated pretty good by the metrics. They quite frankly need LJ Cryer to just really become that guy to score 20 points a game on a daily basis. And I think you're talking about a team, they're still like 3rd or 4th favorite, depending on what betting market you use, to win the national championship. So watch out for Houston. I still lean Iowa State quite by a lot, honestly. But then it is Houston after that. Number 15, UCLA went to Nebraska. Big Ten matchup. Nebraska got the better of them, 66-58. Nebraska lost earlier in the year by 37 to Michigan State. Other than that, they're 12-2. They're looking at like an 8 seed right now, maybe even better, maybe a 7 or 6 seed. They look really good right now. Shout out to Fred Hoiberg. They are well coached. This program, I didn't realize this. I think this game was on Fox, maybe? I didn't realize this, but they showed Fred Hoiberg's record at Nebraska, and it was well under 500. I didn't know that, but Nebraska was just kind of a, they were in Minnesota. No disrespect to Minnesota. They were just kind of pushing them away, and Minnesota might have even been a better program than them. It took time for Fred Hoiberg to build it up, but now that he's built it up, he has done a tremendous job. He's looking like he's going to get in the tournament for the 2nd straight year. Their roster isn't awesome. It's not bad. It's not awesome, though, and they're still like a top half of the Big Ten team. Good for them. Good for Nebraska. Nice to see them compete and taking down this good UCLA team. Arizona picked up the win that they needed at number 16 Cincinnati. True home game for Cincinnati, 72-67. Cincinnati might not have a tournament resume right now. I know you look at this number on here. They were ranked 16th at the time. They don't have a win in the Big 12. They don't really have a win of note outside of Dayton. They beat Xavier at home by 3 in the crosstown shootout. Xavier is not a tournament team as of right now. Cincinnati's resume is a little bit flaky, and they got another big one tonight, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but Arizona picks up the key win. I think Arizona's going to end up in the tournament. Tommy Lloyd's, I know they were a top 10 team coming into the year, and it's obviously been disappointing, but Tommy Lloyd's starting to figure it out, it looks like, with this roster. Caleb Love been playing a lot better. Georgia lost at number 24, Ole Miss, 63-51. Great defense by Chris Beard's Ole Miss team in that one. Georgia drops this one, but I'm not really too worried about either of these teams. Both just kind of middle-of-the-pack SEC teams, in my opinion, but every SEC team is phenomenal. North Carolina escaped absolute disaster, beating Notre Dame 74-73. They were down by 3 in the closing seconds, and Elliot Cadeau hit a game-tying and 1-3. Knocked down the free throw. Marcus Burton came down. Marcus Burton back for Notre Dame, by the way. Didn't expect him to see him so soon, but love to see him back. Obviously makes all the difference in the world. Came down, barely missed the last second shot, but North Carolina escaped disaster. There would have been fireworks in the North Carolina community had they lost this game, but Elliot Cadeau bails them out. Brian Dutcher and San Diego State traveled to Boise State and beat them 76-68. Entered the game as the underdog. Boise State having a disappointing year. They were my pick to win the Mountain West coming into the year. They haven't lived up to that expectation. San Diego State and Brian Dutcher gets the job done. Vanderbilt went to LSU. Vanderbilt beat them 80-72. Mark Byington doing one of the best jobs, maybe the best job. You got to give it to Mark Pope. Definitely got to give it to Mark Pope. But Mark Byington, right in that conversation as the best new coach in the entire country. They've been great. They'd be in the tournament right now. They got a big one again tonight. We'll talk about it in a second. Doing a lot of foreshadowing here. Now, 2 teams that were in my first 4, next 4 out, somewhere on just outside the tournament, needed wins. San Francisco went to Washington State in the WCC matchup. Washington State got the better of them 91-82. It's nice to see Washington State's, obviously Kyle Smith did a great job last year, but he left, and they're still towards their probably 3rd or 4th best team in the WCC behind Gonzaga and St. Mary's. They look good. They got a chance of getting an at-large bid. Nice to see that. Colorado went to Arizona State and got drilled. Bobby Hurley's squad won 81-61 in this one. NC State went to Wake Forest. Wake Forest beat them 77-59. If NC State makes the Final Four again after what they did last year, I mean, they don't look good this year. They didn't look good last year, and they ended up making it all the way to the Final Four. Wake Forest off to a 3-1 start in the ACC, so maybe they're starting to figure some things out there. Louisville went to Virginia and killed them 70-50. The game was closer than this. They just ended up blowing them out towards the end. Louisville's a top 5 team in the ACC, in my opinion. Louisville might get it done. They lost all these players to injuries, and as soon as it happened, they've almost become a better team, quite frankly. So maybe some defining the roles there, and they look good. Pat Kelsey done a great job. Let's move on to Sunday quickly. After Kansas got beat at home by West Virginia, it seemed to light a spark under them. They went to UCF. Remember, they got beat at UCF last year. Texas A&M lost at UCF this year. UCF just went to Texas Tech and beat them. Kansas beat them by 51, 99-48. My goodness. Now, Kansas got back Shaquille Moore. Shaquille Moore was placed into the starting lineup, and it seemed to just kind of light a little bit of a fire under A.J. Storr. He looked the best in this game that I have seen this year. UCF is well coached, I'll say, under Johnny Dawkins. They're better than people expected. They were just no match. This looked like the preseason number 1 team that we were expecting. Kansas still has some things to figure out, but this was a great start. Hunter Dickinson was also great in this one. Maryland had a great opportunity to go into number 9 Oregon and get a win. Remember, Maryland lost to Washington. Oregon lost to Illinois badly at home. So both teams really in need of a win here. Maryland led pretty big early in the game. I think they were up 13 or 15. Oregon fought all the way back and got the win 83-79. Maryland goes 0-2 on their trip to the West Coast to Washington and to Oregon. Oregon with a key win there. Providence put up a great fight against number 11 UConn. UConn was without Liam McNeely, but Providence led a lot of the game. UConn ended up pulling it off at home, 87-84. Kind of gives me more confidence that Marquette might be the team to beat in the Big East, but don't ever bet against Danny Hurley. Northwestern got drilled at number 20 Purdue. Nothing really to speak about there. North Texas lost at number 21 Memphis, only by 4. North Texas, a sneaky good team. Could be a legit bid stealer in the American Conference this year. Number 22 Illinois stayed hot on their West Coast trip by beating Washington. So these teams just kind of all did a little round robin thing. 81-77. Penn State fell at the Palestra, which is Penn. To Indiana. I know I got the graphic wrong. I made a mistake for, I think, the first time this year, hopefully, at least what I've noticed on the graphic. It was 77-71, not 77-61. Indiana got the job done. It was kind of a no-doubter. They just led the entire game. Indiana looked better. They were without Malik Reneau in this one, too, and they looked better in this one. And then the other one, Drake loses at home to Murray State. Drake falls for the second game in a row, I think, or 2 of 3, one of them. Murray State beats them 66-59, kind of putting a blow in their at-large chances. On Monday, not much to talk about. Houston dominated TCU. TCU sucks this year. Houston's looking a lot better. Wisconsin went to Rutgers and beat them 75-63. I think Wisconsin is really good. Watch out for Wisconsin this year. I mean, they lost A.J. Storr, Chucky Hepburn, and I'm missing one, but and everyone just kind of wrote them off, including myself. They look a lot better this year than they did last year. I know at the beginning of last year, we were talking about them like potentially being a 1 seed. I don't think they're there this year, but their style of basketball looks better this year. I think Wisconsin is a sneaky dark horse to make a Sweet 16 run. In a very, let's talk about Rutgers real quick. Rutgers is not close to the tournament right now. They don't look good. They do not look good. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper are going to be, at worst, 2 top 5 picks, and they can't win. Their team around them is not good. Not good. Ohio State went to Minnesota. What a crazy game this ended up being. Won the game 89-88. Kind of escape disaster. If there's a game you can't lose in the Big Ten, it's quite frankly to Minnesota, and they almost did. They were down 2 with Minnesota at the free throw line. Minnesota missed both free throws. Ohio State, John Mobley came down. Just Minnesota made a boneheaded foul, knocked down free throws, went to overtime. Crazy game. Ohio State escapes disaster there. Ohio State would be in the tournament right now. Minnesota not close. And then the other game of note, Wichita State off to a good start to the season. They hosted UCF in this one and got drilled. UCF took them down 91-72. So that is about it for the entire weekend, I guess, that we had this obviously just incredibly loaded week. So this leaves us with only one undefeated team left. We mentioned Florida lost. We mentioned Oklahoma lost. Tennessee, the number 1 team in the AP poll, is your last remaining undefeated team. So this is a good little bridge to get us into our bracketology and the 1 seeds, the 2 seeds, the 3 seeds, the 4 seeds. I also have the 5 seeds listed on here just for the fun of it. So let's talk about them real quick. These are our top seeds as of right now. The number 1 overall seed is, without a doubt, the Auburn Tigers. They have the best resume in the country, most quad 1 wins. They are, in terms of KenPom, they have just about as good a team as UConn had last year. And we talk about UConn being one of the best teams ever in college basketball. And Auburn's right there in terms of their net rating. I know, obviously, UConn's was spread over an entire season. Auburn's has only been, how many games have been? 15 or so, 14. So, but they're really good. Tennessee is the second number 1 seed, no brainer there. Iowa State is the third number 1 seed, and Duke as the fourth number 1 seed. As I mentioned, if you look at any other bracketology, this is what you should see. It is without a doubt. These are the top 4 teams in terms of overall body of work as of right now. I know some people are going to say Kentucky over Duke. Now, in terms of what the selection committee uses, Duke would be the last number 1 seed. Alrighty, starting off the 2 seeds with Alabama, the Crimson Tide as the first overall number 2 seed. Marquette right after them, that Kentucky team that we just talked about, as the third number 2 seed. And then Oregon. Yes, I know Oregon, but their resume is fantastic. 5 quad 1 wins It's really good. I know Illinois, we mentioned, just went there and dominated them, but Oregon's got the overall better body of work. Winning that Players Era Festival was huge. I got Oregon as the last number 2 seed. Moving on to the 3 seeds, Mississippi State flying under the radar this year in the SEC, and then Florida right there with them. Illinois, that team we just mentioned, all the way up to number 7 in the net. How about Illinois? Texas A&M right behind them as the last 3 seed. Moving on to the 4 seeds, UConn out of the Big East, and then Kansas kind of just really picked up that huge net building win. They went from 21st to 10th in the net after they just obliterated UCF. The Michigan State right behind them is the next 4 seed, and then UCLA right there behind them as the final 4 seed. Now the 5 seeds, the up next. We got Houston. Houston's still without a quad 1 win. Yes, they're still ranked high in the metrics, which is keeping them there. No bad losses, but still need that quad 1 win. They'll get one in Big 12 play without a doubt. Gonzaga right there behind them. Gonzaga, what you're going to find in the WCC. Now the WCC is better than it usually is. They just still don't have as many opportunities as these other teams have, so it's going to be hard for them to climb up into, unless they ran through and go 20-0. It's going to be tough for them to keep climbing up these seeds. And then West Virginia, how about the Mountaineers? Darian DeVries done a great job right behind them as the next 5 seed, and then Memphis as the final 5 seed, kind of in that same conversation as Gonzaga. If Memphis didn't have that quad 3 loss to Arkansas State at home, you're probably talking about a 3 or 4 seed, but unfortunately that's there, and the metrics still don't really like Memphis too much, but they've played a tough schedule and they've won. They've done a tremendous job. All right. To end the show, let's talk about the slate of games to know for this week of college hoops, starting on Tuesday, which is today. So we're going to talk about, it's a big one. We've got a loaded slate, starting off huge at 7 o'clock on ESPN2. By the way, I got 2 graphics. Yes, it's a Tuesday, and we got 2 graphics. And whenever we have 2 graphics, it's usually split up to must-watch games and then under-the-radar games, and the under-the-radar games are usually just about as good as the must-watch games. But let's start with the must-watch games. 7 o'clock, ESPN2, number 1, Tennessee travels to number 8, Florida. Florida coming off that loss. Tennessee, the last undefeated team in the country, yet they are underdogs. Florida is favored by 3 in this one. At 7 o'clock, starting off big Tuesday on ESPN, Pitt travels to number 4, Duke. Duke favored by 14.5 at home. Here's what I will say. In terms of the metrics, which is really what sets up the betting lines, KenPom is a huge influence. People don't really realize that on the betting lines. Duke is the best team in the ACC. I don't think anyone's ever going to argue that. Pitt is the second best team in the ACC, and Duke is favored by 14.5 over the second best team. Yeah, Duke's going to win the conference by at least 2 games this year. 14.5 point favorites, that feels like a lot of points, but I wouldn't put it past them, because if Duke were to lose the ACC this year, which I don't see happening, this would be the game they lose. I think Pitt's their biggest competitor. Maybe throw North Carolina in there just because it's North Carolina. We know they got talent, but this is a game they can't lose, so don't put it past Duke to, kind of dominate in this one. At 7 o'clock on the SEC network, number 6, Kentucky. Yes, the new number 6 team. They went from number 10 to number 6. They traveled to Georgia in a tough game. Georgia is good. Kentucky favored by 2.5 on the road. This game's at 7 o'clock on the SEC network. Wouldn't be surprised if Georgia gets the job done in that one. At 7 o'clock on ESPN+, Arizona travels to number 21, West Virginia. Number 21, West Virginia, maybe the most impressive team that wasn't expected to be as impressive this season, yet they are still underdogs at home to Arizona by 2.5. Ooh, tough one to pick there. 7 o'clock, ESPN+. At 7 o'clock on ESPNU, maybe the 2 top 5 teams in the ACC. Clemson goes to Louisville. Louisville favored by 3.5. If Louisville wins this game, they might be in as of right now. I'll have to check during the bracketology. No promises, but they're close. They are close. This would be a big one, quad 1 win. I think it would classify as quad 1 win. I'm not sure where Clemson is in the net. At worst, quad 2, but Louisville favored by 3.5. At 8 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network, Georgetown travels to number 7, Marquette. 2 undefeated teams in the Big East. Yes, nice to see Georgetown back in the conversation in college basketball. Marquette is favored by 13 in this one, though. I have a feeling Marquette might blow them out. At 8 o'clock on ESPN Plus, this is the game we mentioned that is kind of just vital for both teams earlier. Cincinnati has not won a game in the Big 12, and it's not going to get easier. They traveled to Baylor. Both teams now unranked after their losses last week. Would have been a ranked on ranked matchup last week. Both teams fell out. Baylor favored by 5.5 in this one. I think Cincinnati's going to cover 5.5 in this one because it is desperation time, but Baylor needs it bad too. I think Cincinnati's going to be able to really keep this one close and maybe sneak out a win there. Watch out for that game. At 9 o'clock on ESPN2, number 2 Auburn travels to Texas. Auburn's favored by 10.5 on the road at Texas, at a team who was, I think they were ranked to start the year. I'm pretty sure they were. Rodney Terry has not done a good job. I'm sorry, Texas fans and Rodney Terry. I like Rodney Terry. Seems like a nice guy, but he went to the Elite Eight in his opening year, but it was the interim opening year where Chris Beard, quite frankly, had a loaded team. They won the Big 12, went all the way there. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas does not make the tournament this year. They got a lot of talent. Trey Johnson's really good. I like their team. They have a huge opportunity here. 10.5-point underdogs against Auburn. Auburn could beat them by 30, and then it's really going to raise some concerns about this Texas team and about Rodney Terry's future. I don't think he's Texas level, quite frankly. We'll see, though. They got a good opportunity. At 9 o'clock on the ACC network, SMU travels to North Carolina. North Carolina favored by 7 in this one. I mentioned I'm not in on SMU. I think it's no joke to say that North Carolina has underperformed this year. I think North Carolina is going to cover this one and kind of get back on track, and people are going to start realizing that SMU isn't that great. At 9 o'clock on ESPNU, number 14, Mississippi State, travels to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt favored by 1.5, according to this graphic. Last I checked, though, I think it flipped. I think Mississippi State is now favored by 1.5. So I think Mississippi State's going to go on the road and get it done. But Vanderbilt has just done everything they're supposed to. Could they do it again? We'll see. And at 10 o'clock on Peacock, ranked on ranked matchup, number 24 Michigan travels to number 22 UCLA. UCLA favored by 3.5 in this one. This is a huge one for the Big Ten. The winner of this one is really in a good spot to win the Big Ten. The loser, Michigan, has more room to lose because they haven't lost yet. UCLA has lost. It's a big one. This is a big one for the Big Ten. If you were to tell me either of these two teams are going to win the Big Ten, I would not be surprised. That's a fun one. Unfortunately, it's at 10 o'clock on Peacock, though. Double negative there. Late one and on Peacock. Yikes. Now let's move into the under-the-radar games. Only 4 of them that we got to talk about here. St. John's travels to Xavier. St. John's hanging on by a thread. Not as good a resume as you think. The metrics like them. Haven't really had any huge wins. They are favored by 1.5 at a sneaky tough Xavier team. 6:30 on FS1. Now Utah travels to number 3 Iowa State. This game's at 8 o'clock on ESPN Plus. Iowa State favored by 19.5. My goodness. They are so much better than Utah. I would expect a blowout. I don't know if it's going to be 19.5, but they're going to beat them. 8 o'clock on Peacock. Nebraska travels to Iowa. This game opened as about a pick'em. Iowa now favored by 4.5. Wow. We will see about this one. That seems kind of like a lot of points. I took Iowa when it was a pick'em, but Nebraska looks pretty good. Iowa really good offensively. Nebraska really well coached. We'll see about this one. That'll be a fun one. 9 o'clock on ESPN Plus. 2 teams kind of in early not desperation mode, but really need a win mode. Texas Tech goes to BYU. Both teams probably just on the outside looking in. Maybe BYU has a better resume right now than Texas Tech, but the metrics like Texas Tech better. Both teams need a win pretty bad. BYU favored by 3 in that one. 9 o'clock ESPN Plus. Sneaky good game there. All right, now let's quickly go through the other days. Moving on to Wednesday. Number 9, UConn travels to Villanova. Villanova playing really good basketball right now. UConn, an underdog to Villanova. Yes, Villanova favored by 1 in this game. Will Kyle Neptune be the one to really get the job done? Eric Dixon will be the best player on the floor. We have to monitor. Will Liam McNeely play? Keep an eye on that, and then we'll take a pick in that one. Now Drake travels to Bradley at 7 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network. The 2 best teams in the Missouri Valley, 2 teams that would not be worse than a 12 seed if they win the conference, and these are the 2 teams to watch out for. Bradley is favored by 4. Drake coming off a couple losses. Bradley was the preseason favorite. Fun one to watch. 7 o'clock CBS Sports Network. 7 o'clock on the SEC Network. Number 5 Alabama travels to South Carolina. If there's a road game you're expected to win in the SEC, it is out South Carolina. And last year, teams did not win at South Carolina. Now, they were better last year. Still a tough spot for number 5 Alabama. They are favored by 8 via KenPom. At 7 o'clock on ESPN2, number 23 Ole Miss travels to Arkansas. Yes, John Calipari's Arkansas squad, they are favored by 2 in this one over Ole Miss. As I mentioned, Arkansas looked like they did not want to be their last game. They need a win. They need a win pretty bad. This would obviously be a quad 1 win. Ole Miss comfortably in the tournament. Arkansas, they're in. Barely. 9 o'clock, Big Ten Network. Penn State travels to number 13 Illinois. Illinois favored by 9 in this one. I'm going to make a hot take right here. I don't think Penn State is going to end up in the tournament. This might be a little bit too hot of a take. I don't think they're going to end up getting there. Ace Baldwin is awesome. I have a feeling they're going to end up as a first 4 outs, next 4 out sort of team. Would I be surprised if they get in? No, not at all. I'll just take a hot take right here. I don't think they're going to end up getting in. There's just too many roadblocks, and they're a good team. They're just not a great team yet. We'll see. Hopefully they prove me wrong. I'm really rooting on this Penn State team. I really like them. I like Ace Baldwin a lot. One of the most underrated players in the country. They have an opportunity here. You beat Illinois, you're probably going to be in the tournament. At 9 o'clock on ESPN2, Arizona State travels to number 11, Kansas. Kansas outside of the top 10 now. Kansas is favored by 12 in this one. And then another ranked-on-ranked matchup, 9 o'clock, SEC Network, number 10, Texas A&M, up into the top 10. Travels to Oklahoma, coming off that loss. Texas A&M favored by 1 in this game. This will be a close game. This will be a fun one to watch. 9 o'clock, SEC Network. Moving on to Thursday, just 2 games to talk about. At 6 o'clock, both games at 6 o'clock. Love to see early starts in the Big Ten. Number 15, Oregon travels to Ohio State on the Big Ten Network. Ohio State favored by 3 via KenPom in that one. At 6 o'clock on FS1, number 20, Purdue travels to Rutgers. Purdue is favored by 4 in that one. Rutgers just always seems to beat Purdue, and Purdue is not as good as they've obviously been in the past couple years without Zach Edey, but Rutgers is really, really struggling right now, so I would not recommend betting that game. On Friday at 8 o'clock on Fox, we got a fun one. Number 22, UCLA travels to Maryland. Maryland favored by 3 in that one. UCLA can't really falter in the game against Michigan and then the game against Maryland. You probably have to go 1-1 at worst to really hold on to a shot of winning the Big Ten. I know it's early, but 2 big games, 2 tough scheduled games for UCLA. That will do it for the show today. Longer show. Ended up being longer. It always goes longer than we expect, but a lot of action that took place, a lot of action to take place, especially tonight on Tuesday. Hopefully you're listening to this before Tuesday. I know we're coming to you a little bit later than usual. Usually it's about an 8 a.m. release. This will be about a noon release, so hopefully you're watching, get some bets in, watch some good college basketball, enjoy the Tuesday night slate. Stay safe out there. We'll talk to you again this weekend. Till then, take care.